that stuff happen. It was kind of interesting because this country, doesn't experience many kind of violent events like that on a
No, I mean the most interesting happens to us is people in Florida, grappling with shags.
There are bad things going on. I nearly said a bad word there. There's some bad thing going on. But that was just an interesting thing from the point of view of a kid who it didn't matter to me at all. I wasn't scared or anything. That's how it happened. So cool. That was the answer to the question, wasn't it?
I think more than anybody ever wanted to know.
We've got to know something about that bat left man, if he's still here. Yeah, wake up. My kids are very well. Buster, who's 8, who's actually half my kid, but he might as well be all of it because he's just a great kid. And he's at the French school trying to work out. He's at a French school in New York. I don't know if we sent him to a French school thinking, what a gift. We'll give him the gift of another language. And he's a kid, and you can do that for kids, apparently. They can learn stuff real quick. Anyone else going to a French school is like... But he can do it. But he comes back and he says, Dad, it's like a big blob. I'm just watching the French teacher, and she's just speaking a big blob at me. And he's been there for 2 months, and he's doing pretty well. He remembers a lot of the words. And my little kid, Django, who's 4 now, is also at the same school in a different grade, clearly.
He's preparing to be the Mahdi of Sudan. Yeah.
He doesn't listen to a word anybody says. So they're speaking French or English. They do English one day, French the next. That's how they teach the little kids. And he's like, whatever, I'm not listening anyway. Huh? Like father, like son. I've got some tear gas in the back room, which I just pump into his bedroom at night, like I kind of odorize it.
Yes, ma'am. The one I hated the most was it was interesting. The one I hated the most were those crossover things. For some reason, I really disliked all the crossover, alternate universe.
Yeah, they were tough.
And plus, they were really boring for me because it was just Garrick behaving like the Scorpio Killer from Dirty Harry, which was really, I'd been down that road and there was no subtlety, no subtext, no. But the thing, and one of those two, there was Michael Dorn, who had a chain around my neck and who was, like yanking me by the chain. Everybody thought that was hilarious, and I wanted to, anyway. Another little child walked in here, so I really. But the one I had problems for a very different reason with Our Man Bashir. It's a show that's a great show, and it's like one of my favorite shows when I saw it. But doing that show, do you remember how difficult that was?
It was a tough show.
It was like, and also it broke, at the time, it broke all the records for overtime and overages in terms of budget. I mean, they spent a fortune. More than any other up to that point. I don't know if it's been broken since. Probably not, because the studio went insane. But they spent more money on that episode than they had on any other episode of Star Trek. And we were working, 14, 16. I remember one day there was a 20-hour day. I think it was that last Friday, and which we worked until Saturday morning. I mean, it was like horrible. And for me, I mean, if I was in that makeup for more, I could last for 12 hours in that makeup. If it went beyond 12 hours, that's when, as Sid says, I became really crazy. Because it was.
Went beyond 12 hours.
It was, yeah.
It often went.
Yeah, it did. It really did. And of course, that's where you made a lot of money in terms of your union overtime. But I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I said, I'll give you the money back. Let me out of this. Just let me out. It was so uncomfortable. And, so most of my experiences were because I was in the makeup too long. My negative experiences were the makeup too long. But then again, I realized that there could be no character Garrick without that makeup. I mean, so I wasn't kidding myself. But I don't have, my fond memories of Garrick, and I do. I love that character. The character is one of the handful of characters that I've played in my career that I truly loved playing. And coming back to it, and doing this play with Sid, I've realized I get that old kind of juices flowing. But I always have, but in the middle of that memory is the memory of having to sit in that chair, and while they slapped on cold glue, and when it started out, especially at the beginning, when it took about 4 hours, they got it down to about 2.5 hours, but it was quite horrible. But the favorite ones, obviously, I mean, I've said this a million times. I mean, it's not only my favorite episode of Star Trek. It's like one of my favorite episodes of anything I've ever done in terms of acting. Is the one that Sid and I did, The Wire, because that one just, that had so much. That was so brilliant. I mean, I love By Pale Moonlight, the thing with Cisco and Garrett, because of what it said politically, and I thought that it was like one of the most sophisticated, one of the most really astute political statements that was made on that show. I love that two-parter with Odo. The die is cast, and I always want to say inadmissible evidence, but that's a John Osborne play.
Improbable cause.
Thank you, Improbable Cause. I love that two-parter. That was a sheer delight. But The Wire, by far, is my favorite one.
That was a good show. Cool.
How about anybody else back there? I mean, thank God you're here, ma'am. I mean, ask away, because, you're the only game in town here.
Yeah, Michelle. Lay it on us.
Did you talk over the years about how Avery found Avery intimidating?
Mr. Brooks? Yeah. Yeah. Well, Mr. Brooks, he is just one of the, he's like,
The story's done. There's kids.
There's kids. And he's good. He's a good over 6 foot of pure muscle. And you wouldn't, I don't know what, an age you can't tell because he is so superhumanly strong. You walk past his trailer, and you just hear this, and this dumbbell going up and down and up and down, and it's like, Doctor! And I was like, come here. And he is. Has anyone here heard him talk? You've heard him talk. He's pretty rare. It's not an easy thing to get to see Mr. Brooks talking. And he is the only person, I think, on the whole cast who everybody called Mr. Brooks.
I didn't.
You didn't. I didn't either very often, but really, the crew and some of the guests and all that, the cast kind of messed around with rules like that. But everybody would say, Mr. Brooks, we've got 5 minutes before we have to shoot, and I'll be right there. And, this is like, he is, if anybody knows anybody, and, African-American who is educated to beyond over-educated. Just don't need to know this much. He knows it. And who is like a professor, a university professor of Shakespeare, or a theater at least, I'm not sure on the details of that one, who is emeritus professor somewhere else, who talks to huge groups of students, like every day of his life on some level, who is just the most extraordinary man. He has the kind of charisma that just freaks you out. Just freaked me out. It scared the hell out of me all the time. And he has this way of talking. It's like he'd make himself comfortable, and it's that 70s kind of slightly jazzy, Hey, yeah, pow. No, I don't think you understand, man. Hey, yeah. That's right. Hey, Cat, that's it. You dig it? That's it. We'll be like, yes, I dig, Mr. Brooks. Yes, sir. Yes, a hit for that, man. I'm exaggerating. But he's a cool cat, in his own words. And if he does ever come around this neck of the woods, be sure and get a ticket here, because it's going to be an amusing conversation, at least an amusing talk. He's not very conversant, like chatting. He'll certainly talk at you for a good hour and a half. And you'll learn something, Whew, am I in trouble with Mr. B?
Yes, sir. Andy, how did you get your name?
I didn't get my name. Yeah, no.
Shortly after the original series finished its first section of movies or whatever, Walter Koenig and Mark Leonard went off and did like The Boys of Summer. So
I'm not here.
have you and Sid thought about perhaps mounting a show like that?